Hey everybody, it's EJ from Eyedesyn.com, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to create some very expressive cursive logo type animations, or as I refer to it as a boingy laffy taffy type logo animation. So if you want to learn what the heck that is, keep on watching. Okay, so this is what I have been talking about. This is what we're going to be building and animating today. And you can see that we have this really nice, expressive, or as I say, the Laffy Taffy kind of really boingy, springy kind of type. It looks super, super nice, and I tell you what, it adds a lot more interesting animation to your typical spline wrap animation that you would typically make for cursive logos. So I'm going to break this down and also show you a fun, interesting way to integrate this in any kind of 2D work you might be doing inside of After Effects. So let's just set the scene here, break down what we got going on so far. So here we go. We basically, if I turn off all this stuff, let me turn off this background studio here and just kind of break down what we have. So if I turn everything off here, you can see that everything is built off of these two splines. So I got my art spline and my T-cross. And you can see that we have some nice depth here going on, and I'm not going to go through how I created these splines. We all know how to make splines by now, but if you don't, I'll link to a tutorial on doing some really nice cursive logo animations using some 3D splines in Cinema 4D or Cinema 4D Lite. So just putting that out there. But we're using these splines to just basically use a cube, just a very elongated cube. You can see that it's, it's very, very long cube in the X. We have some fillet here just to round it out. I have a bunch of segments here just so it can actually wrap along this spline correctly. So if I turn this on, we don't have enough segments. It kind of looks kind of weird, but actually that looks kind of cool. That's a cool little low poly look there. Keep that in your pocket. Use it for some time in the future. But I'm just going to crank this all the way up so we get really nice smooth edges here. And then just to ensure that these edges are fairly smooth and so we don't have to go too overboard with the subdivisions here, I just threw everything in a subdivision surf, and you can see that rounds it out, and you can tell why I kind of think of this as Laffy Taffy or something like that. And I need to get some Laffy Taffy. I've been talking about it. I want some. But you can see that's our spline wrap, wrapping that little cube, that rounded cube, along the spline using the spline wrap. We also have some variable thickness of that cube as it goes throughout that spline, and that's just using the spline editor here and the spline size. Very simple to set up, but I'm not going to go through that because that's kind of time consuming. But just knowing that you can make little edits in the spline editor here to adjust the rotation of your object as it goes along the spline is very important. So we got that, and then I just added just a little bit of a displacer just to kind of distort things just a tiny bit. Just loaded up a normal noise shader in here, nothing too fancy, nothing too complicated. And then the same thing for this little T-cross element here. That's just using the second spline here, just a simple spline. And then all the same stuff. We got the spline wrap. We have some variable thickness using the splines, the spline editor here. You can see that. And again, if you want to learn more about how I set this up, again, I already did a tutorial on setting up a cursive logo and going in depth into the spline size, spline editor windows, as well as rotation. So you're just gonna skip over that. And you can learn more on your own if you want. But now we're going to try to animate this and make this very expressive looking. We want to animate this in a way that is just a little bit more, gives it a little bit more oomph from just animating the to and from. But we're still going to do this. We're going to do this. So let's actually do that. Let's go and animate this, these two elements animating on. So first thing I want to do is, since we got two spline wraps and I don't get confused in my timeline editor, I'm just going to rename this so I know which of these are which. So that's the art spline, and this is the T-cross spline. So that's always helpful to when you have a bunch of animated spline wraps and they're all named spline wrap. You're like, well, what spline wrap is that? So now we know what spline wrap is that. So Now we're just going to go in and animate the to and from on each of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and on frame 65, we have it at 100%. At frame 0, we're just going to bring this all the way down to 0. And you're going to notice we still have this little segment right here that is going to appear in our render, as you can see. So just to remove that, what we're going to do for actually both the objects here is add a display tag. So just Cinema 4D tags, display tag, and if we use this visibility, we can then keyframe the visibility in our scene. So at frame 0, we actually don't want any visibility at all. And you can see that if I bring that all the way down to 0, we no longer have that segment. I'll just set a keyframe for that. Then we're just going to go one frame step forward and bring that visibility back up to 100%. Set another keyframe. So now you can see that we now have our logo animating on and our spline wrap animating. The one thing you're going to notice though is that once it's scrunched up at the end, we have all this kind of bunching up, and this is due to the scale options we have here, kind of bunching things up, and also the displacer. So what I want to do is actually it's just all the displacer. So that displacer is kind of giving us some trouble. So what we can do is actually just adjust the strength of this as it moseys along. So what I'm going to do is at the very beginning of the animation, I'm just going to set a keyframe for the strength of that displacer and hit a keyframe. Go to frame about, we want this to kind of go a little bit further before we bring this up. So you can see that if I bring this up there, you can't really distinguish that the displacer is really distorting this a lot, so it's more subtle than it was right here. So let's just go to our timeline editor here, and we got our spline or our displacer strength, and we'll just have the strength build up somewhere in the middle of the animation, so it's very subtle. You can very subtly tell that that displacer strength is cranking up. And let's just do the same thing and animate our little T-cross here. So let's set a keyframe right about here. So that'll start at, it'll end at frame 65. And then we'll just have this start right at frame 48. And again, we got to do the same thing with the display tag. So we got to add that to the cross to get rid of this little segment here. Turn on visibility, and we want to make sure we're keyframing this visibility, not the U's, right? So we're going to go ahead and keyframe visibility, set that to 0 first, then set a keyframe, step ahead one frame, bring that up to 1000% visibility. That's really visible at 1000%. So we'll do 100, and there we go. So now we got our ART and then our cross, right? And actually, the displacer on our T isn't very noticeable, so we really don't have to adjust that at all. It looked like just the displacer on our original ART cube or element is the one thing that really looked odd as this started building on. So everything else is looking really nice. The one thing that will really help make this animation a lot more interesting is if we add some like variable speed to how this is animating on. So just like we added some subtle variation to the thickness of the cube as it goes along, that adds some more interesting design elements to it. We're also going to add some more interest to the animation by making this maybe act like a roller coaster, right? So maybe it speeds up as it goes to the bottom and slows down as it gets to the top of this crest of this curve, and then speeds up again, kind of like that. We all know how a roller coaster works. So we're going to do that with the animation of the spline wrap. So I'm going to bring up the old timeline here, and let's go ahead, and again, this is important, why we, let me just delete all this stuff here. So we got all this stuff in here. Delete, and we're gonna go and let's just set a keyframe. Oops, I accidentally, let me undo that. Didn't want to undo that, so I accidentally deleted the to and from. So we're just gonna go and deal with the to here, and there we go. I can delete all the rest of this stuff here. Spline rotation strength, don't need any of that. So now we're just focusing on the two here, on our spline wrap as it grows along our spline. I'm gonna just bring this out. And so what we're gonna do is to make this speed variable throughout the animation, we're just gonna set keyframes where the speed will change. So the speed will kind of change and slow down right about here at the top of this crest. So that's where it will slow down greatly, and we'll set a keyframe there. Then we'll go ahead further, and then it will slow down here, so we'll set another keyframe. So that's another speed change. And let's see, we can have it maybe slow down right there too, so at the crest of that T. And I think that should be good. So what we're going to do to slow that down is just adjust these curves to flatten them out a little bit. Something like that. And we actually want this to start out very fast, so we don't want a ease in. We just want this to shoot out the gate. And you can see that we still need to adjust some stuff to really add some more speed to this. So we now need to adjust the spacing of all this stuff. And let's see how that looks. So we have that shoot up, and we want this to speed up as it goes to the crest of that first segment of the R. And then we can have that speed up to there. That's looking good. And let's see if we can just adjust these curves, make these curves a little bit longer. Just do an easy ease, and we'll really make some extreme curves. Extreme curves. There we go. And again, adjust the front so we don't want the ease in off the top. And let's see how this looks. So we got that really sweeping in, and then the variable speed matching as like it's a roller coaster going along here, slowing down at the tips of the curves and looking good. This might be a little too flat there. And actually we can have this slow down like right there as well. So I'll add just another keyframe there and make this a soft one. There we go. And see if that helps. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot better. I'm liking that a lot better. And we'll just bring this in. I want this to really swoosh out at the end. So something like that. We've got even added sound effects there. Just this. Nice. Okay, I'm liking that, and I'm going to stop tweaking that because we could tweak that forever, right? And I don't want to get stuck in tweak land. So there we go. We got some really nice expressive animation right off the top. And so now how do we make this more expressive? How do we add that little springy movement to make this look even more organic, expressive, more interesting? Well, it's as easy as bringing in my very favorite effector, or my very favorite deformer, and that is the good old Jiggle Deformer. So what we're going to do to have the Jiggle effector affect the animation that our Spline Wrap gives or adds to our cube here is to put the Jiggle Deformer right after the Spline Wrap. So that's very important, the hierarchy here, because we want the Spline Wrap animation to take place first, and then we want to jiggleify it. We need to jigify it, and with the Jiggle Deformer right there. So let's see what happens now. So now you can see that we got some really wacky, crazy stuff going on here. And this is where we tone this down. Tone this down a lot. And what's happening is that our stiffness is fairly low. It's at 40%. So you can see that the actual mesh of our cube is getting really distorted and kind of looks like cloth almost. So that could be a kind of cool thing if you want to go for that. But we're going to bring the stiffness all the way up here. And the thing that's giving us all these little individual ripples and stuff like that is this structural. So the higher this structural is, the more ripples and the more springs are going to be loaded into the actual geometry. So if I bring that down to 0, you can see we got rid of all those springs. This is more a smooth mesh, but we still have this really, really expressive, cartoony, boingy Boingy is going to be a word I'm going to use a lot. We've got this really nice boingy animation. And we can kind of temper this down a little bit by adjusting the drag. This is kind of going to add friction to this animation. So that kind of tempers that down a little bit. Let's see what this looks like at maybe 44. So it's all about, adding just a little bit, because a little bit could go a long way. And I'm kind of liking that at, say, like 40, something like that. That's looking pretty good. And again, we can adjust these springs, and this kind of adjusts the stiffness, like how many springs are in the animation. So it's kind of like if you had a whole row of springs stacked on top of one another, it's going to be more bendy. But if you only have one stiff spring, it's going to be less. So you can see as we bring the springs down, it's not really as springy as we'd want. But if we bring the spring all the way up, you can see it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more pliable, right? And then iterations kind of adds more stiffness to all the springs that we add there. So if we want it to be less stiff, we can bring down the iterations here so you can see how it's a little bit more loopy kind of stuff. But I think just the default 4 and 4 works pretty well for what we're doing here. We can actually bring down the strength of the stiffness. We can adjust all these things here to really get the look and feel that we want. And I think just adding the springiness, this section right here, I think is too fast. I think that's really pulling on that R. So since we animated this without knowing how that Jiggle Deformer will affect it, we can actually go into the one keyframe and smooth that out a little bit and adjust the spacing here. So you can see that this steep curve is probably what's causing us that issue. So we can adjust that curve, move those keyframes down a little bit, and see if that kind of makes that a little bit better and it doesn't tug so much. Cool. So that's exactly what was causing that. Again, a lot of give and take and tweaking to get the right look that you want. But I think this is looking really, really good. So the only thing we need to do is then add that we need to jiggleify our T-cross here. So we're just going to use the same exact Jiggle Deformer because we like the settings we set in this one. Just going to hold down Command, click, and drag. And just bring that, and again, we need to make sure we bring that below the spline wrap there. We can see how this looks. So we can see that jiggle happening. And actually, what we probably need to do is bring up our timeline again. And there is our T spline wrap again. Very important to actually name these deformers to see what it corresponds to. And we'll just have this as well, not have a ease in. We'll just have it shoot right out the gates and see how that looks, because we want more of that speed to really get that nice curvature or that nice springiness that's going to happen here with our T. So that looks really good, and that's timed out very well with the appendage on our T here. So they all come in at the same time, and I think that kind of reinforces this motion at the very end. So that's looking pretty darn good. So you can see that, with the Jiggle Deformer applied to the spline wrap animation, it really adds a ton to our cursive logo here. If we go ahead and turn off the Jiggle Deformer, you can see that, yeah, even if we have that variable speed from the just the spline wrap animation, it looks pretty good, but you can just tell just adding that Jiggle Deformer just makes this such a more fun, cartoony kind of logo that could really fit with a lot of work that you could be working on in the future. So hopefully that's very helpful. The one thing I want to go and take this even further is, to be able to do this kind of cursive-y logo animation with this nice jiggly effect added to it is something that I don't even want to think about how long it would take to actually do this inside of After Effects, right? So, and I really want to hit home with a lot of my tutorials that I'm doing is, Cinema 4D for me is one of my favorite applications. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to get things done just in Cinema 4D. But a lot of times there's some tools that are in Cinema 4D that just lend itself so well to building certain, say, 2D elements that you could use inside of After Effects to really augment and composite into your 2D animation. So what I'm going to do is just kind of show an example of how we can then adapt this to, say, a more 2D style kind of work. So basically we have the same kind of animation. We got our Jiggle Deformers all set up. We got the same kind of springy movement here, right? The only thing I did was, you know, my cube used to be much thicker, right? And all we did was just scale that down to something much smaller. So we just have this little skinny bean kind of thing. And we still have some of the diffuse shading from the lights in our scene. What we can do to get rid of that and make this more of a 2D 2D asset is just turning off all this stuff, turning on the luminance. And you can see that now this is just like a flat 2D kind of piece of artwork. So that's looking good. We're going to save that out, and then we're going to jump into After Effects. But before that, what I want to do is make sure to prevent any kind of issues that may occur. I actually want to cache this jiggly movement that is applied from our Jiggle Deformer. And we can do that very easily by just going into the Jiggle Deformer's cache tab, hitting enable, and just hitting calculate. And what that's going to do is it's going to then bake or cache that jiggly animation into our project here. So let's just make sure. So we actually have some issue at the very top there. So maybe we don't want to cache. We're just going to go fly blind into After Effects, and hopefully this works. So here we go. We just imported the text Cinema 4D file in here. We're just going to drag that into a new composition, and let's just make this 50% here so it fits in our view. And to actually see the same kind of viewport that we have inside of Cinema, we can go to the OpenGL and just hit the RAM preview. And good. So we don't have any Jiggle Deformer issues coming in here, which is really great. So we don't need to cache it at all, which is good because I don't know what's going on with that cache. But you can see that we have this now inside of After Effects. And again, we can composite this into, you know, whatever animation we're doing. This is really cool, like kind of logo animation treatment, right? So that's looking good. The one thing I like to do to a lot of these animations with this expressive kind of cursive logo jiggle animation is to add even more layers of subtle animation to it via the form of boil. Now, if you don't know boil animation, it's something that is added to a lot of 2D animation these days. And I actually created a whole plugin that does this same exact thing. It's called Boil It. You can find it on the Eyedesyn store. Basically what it does is inside of After Effects, you just load it up, and we can add custom boil effects to any objects in our scene. So I want to apply some boil to this 3D Cinema 4D layer that we brought in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and you can set the interval of the boil, you know, how fast you want it to actually boil or animate across or undulate. And we can set all this up. We can set this up as an adjustment layer. And there you go. You can see immediately that this kind of grunged this up a bit. Let me actually go fit to view. And hopefully you guys can see this. But we can adjust the boil size here after the fact. You can see the little wiggly animation. I just think this kind of boil animation works really well just to help supplement that jiggly animation that we had in from our Cinema 4D project there. So we can adjust all this good stuff. We can adjust the strength here too, but we can just add just a little bit of subtleness, and then adjust the boil size here a little bit there as well. So that's looking good. It's just an extra subtle layer of animation. Again, really driving home that a little bit goes a long way. And you can see the little boil effect added here that, you know, once you apply this into the rest of your scene that you're making inside of Cinema 4D with, say, shape layers or anything like that, this is going to work perfectly, especially if you add this nice little boil effect. So we can adjust the interval, maybe adjust the strength up a little bit more, and adjust the size, and see how that looks. So that's looking good. So hopefully this kind of gets the gears in your old cranium running for how to use this this cursive jiggly logo animation to different kind of things. So you're not just limited to cursive logos. Say you're building a shoelace tying and animating and stuff like that, and you want to add that kind of animation to that, or say like a headphone cord, a headphone jack cord that's animating from one side of the room to the other, getting plugged into the wall, an extension plug. So a lot of uses for this kind of effect that I hope you'll find is very useful for your own work in the future. All right, so there you go. That is how we create my patented Laffy Taffy Boingy type logo animation, or the expressive cursive logo animation. And it's a less fun name. But if you guys have any questions on anything I covered, including the alternate 2D way that you can actually use inside of After Effects, let me know in the comment section. And if you like this tutorial, be sure to like it. Hit the little happy like button, and I very much appreciate that. And I very much appreciate you guys watching this. I'll see you guys all in the next tutorial. All right? Bye, everybody.